Good morning.
Okay. Good morning, students.
Good morning, ma'am.
ANN stands for Artificial Neural Network. Okay. So first I will tell you what's the meaning of the neural network, or actually what is neuron. Neural network is made up of neurons. Okay. And what's the meaning of artificial? So actually this artificial neural network, it is based on your biological neural network. You must be knowing this thing, that what is biological neural network. Okay, so that is the structure of the human brain. Like in our brain there are billions of neurons. So actually whatever we do, suppose if you are moving your hand, if you are touching something, okay, so whenever we touch something, suppose like when you are touching something that is very hot, okay, so what happens, abruptly we move our hand from away from that particular thing. Okay, so actually what happens, when you touch that thing, a signal from our skin goes to the brain. So in brain, your neuron will understand that what's the meaning of this, that if this thing is hot, then what we have to do. Okay, it will process that information, it will process the signal, and then it will send a signal back to our hand that move your hand back away from that particular thing. Okay, so when we are touching something, that signal is going to our sensory neurons. Okay, then those neurons will process that information, it will produce the output, that output will go to some motor neurons, those motor neurons then will send the signal back to our hand. Okay, and that signal will tell that you need to move your hand away from that particular thing because that is hot. So this way all the neurons in our brain, they are working. Suppose if you want to move your hand up, or if you are moving your hand, or if you want to walk, okay, so everything is happening actually in the brain. If you want to move your hand, actually the signal from our hand goes to the brain, it tells the brain that I want to move my hand, and then the signal comes back to the hand and then you can move it. But it happens so abruptly that we don't know that everything, this thing is happening actually, okay, within our brain. So that is your biological neural network. So before doing actually the artificial neural network, I need to tell you that what is the structure of our human brain, like what is the structure of actually this neural network. First I will tell you that thing, and then I will tell you that how can you actually derive your network, that is artificial network, from the biological neural network. Is it okay? So here it is written, like in human brain, there are like billions of neurons that are interconnected to each other. Similar to that, in artificial neural network also, I will tell you the diagram, that there are many neurons that are connected to each other at different layers, just similar to your biological neural network. Okay, so the way our brain is processing the information, the artificial neural network will also process the information. Which information? The data set that we are giving to it. It will process that information and it will give you the output. Like suppose if you want to classify something, it will give you the output whether like a particular person, suppose if is having a heart disease or not. Okay, So first thing that I'm taking over here is that what is the structure of, I will come to this later on, what is the structure of a particular neuron? Okay, so this is a diagram of one neuron. Actually, it is not a network, it is just one neuron. Within that neuron, like this is the nucleus and this is the cell body. And this is important. You can see some like tree-like structure over here that is moving away from this cell body. Those are called your dendrites. Fine. And then this is one thing I will tell you what is the function of this, that is called the axon. And these are your axon terminals. Just after the axon terminals, there is something, again, I will tell you what are those. Those are called your synapses. Okay. So now again, I'm taking this information. That suppose that example, that suppose you are touching something. So that signal from your hand is going to the brain, or in brain actually that is going to a particular neuron, suppose. Okay. So in a neuron, there are some tree-like structure. So that input is being received by these dendrites. So whenever that signal is coming, that signal is being received by these tree-like structure that is called the dendrite. Through that cell body now, the information will pass through this. This is your axon. So information will be processed and passed through this axon to these terminals. Okay. Now, after this terminal, actually in our brain, there is some space over here. I'll show you the next diagram. From this axon, when information is passed to the axon terminal, then after axon terminal, it will go to the synapses. Okay, so the signal that I was talking about, that signal is actually the electrical signal. The signal that is moving, suppose from our hand to the brain, that is the electrical signal. So that signal is being passed through this axon to these axon terminals. Then there is actually some space in between the axon terminals. And you can see this is the second neuron. This is the dendrite of the second neuron. In between these axon terminal and these dendrite, there is a space. That space is actually called the synapses. Okay, so what happens over here under this gap, that this electrical signal is actually being changed to the chemical signal. Some chemical changes will take place over here, or simply you can remember it like this, that through these synapses, the information is being passed from one neuron to the another neuron. Okay, or these synapses will decide that whether this information is to be passed to this neuron or not. Okay, what are the other functional synapses that I will take later on. Again, this neuron will process that information. These are the dendrites of the other neuron. Again, the information is being passed through these axons to these terminals, axon terminals, and through this again the information is passed to the other neurons. So this way you can see that there are many neurons that are connected to each other. You can say there is another neuron, another neuron. So that is your biological neural network. Okay, and our neural network that we have to study, that is actually based on this. Whatever we are having over here, like you're having the dendrite, similar to this thing, I have something in a neural network, artificial neural network, similar to axon. I have something that I'll tell you. What are these synapses, what they are doing in our ANN, what is its function? So this I will tell you later on. So first tell me, is this structure that is cleared? You must have done this thing during school time. Yes, is it cleared?
Yes, मैंने किया हुआ +2 में बायो में किया हुआ है.
Yes, all others, beta. Okay, Shivam. Yes. Shall I move to the artificial neural network then? Yes, Harinder, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So here again, I have written the same thing that I have told you over here, that stimuli, again, stimulus means like a signal, like you can say, okay? So whenever you want to move your hand or whenever you are touching something, how do we come to know that whatever we are touching that is very soft or something that is very hard? So actually the signal from the external environment, or you can say from our sensory neurons, it will go to the brain, okay? And in brain, that is being accepted by the dendrites. So stimulus from external environment or inputs from the sensory organs. I hope that this thing is okay. What do you mean by sensory organs? Like skin is our sensory organ, okay? Nose, from where we can smell, eyes, we can see from it. So everything is actually working with the neural network that is in our brain, okay? So inputs from the sensory organs that is accepted by the dendrites. So these signals create electric impulses, or you can say they create electric signals which travel through this neural network. Okay. So a neuron can then send the message to another neuron to handle the issue, or like suppose this neuron is sending the message to this neuron, or it may not forward it. That will be decided by the synapses. So what are these synapses? So these synapses, what they are doing, when any signal is coming, suppose when any input is coming to this signal, it will add a weight to that. It will add a weight with that signal. That weight will tell that whether this input is having some importance or not. If that is to be passed to another neuron, then this weight would be very high. But suppose if this weight is 0, that means this input will also become 0. That means this signal will not be passed to the other neuron. Okay. So depending upon the importance of each input, some weights are being added by these synapses. Okay. So this thing I have already told you that all these neurons, they are connected with special structure known as synapses. Like this neuron is connected to this neuron through these synapses. Through this synapses only, the signal is being passed from axon terminal of one to the dendrites of the other one. So they will take the value from the input, multiply it by some specific weight, and then give the output, and that output will go to the other neuron. Okay. So synapses store the parameters called the weight. So this thing is important about the synapses, that what they are doing, what dendrites are doing. Dendrites are just accepting the input from the external environment or from our sensory organs. And what axon is doing, axon is passing the information, it is processing the input and passing that to the axon terminal. It's a simple working of that. Actually, many things are there. What nucleus is doing, what cell body is doing. There are many things that are being done by all these things, but whatever I need to tell you that. Okay, now this is the ANN. So otherwise do one thing. Okay, over here first I will tell you what is the similarity between your biological neural network and artificial neural network. Like in biological neural network, you are having dendrites. Similar to the dendrites, in ANN, you are having the inputs. Okay, what is cell nucleus in biological neural network? If you are representing something by cell nucleus, that is being represented by, like you can say, nodes. Synapses over here and the weights over here. And what is the axon over here? That is the output. Okay, so I will show you first this thing, this diagram. Don't go over here, what is written over here, just consider this one. Okay, now what is happening actually, suppose you assume that this is the axon terminal of one neuron. Okay, so this is giving you something like output. So that is the input of the another neuron. Okay, so other neuron is taking that input. What synapses are doing? Synapse will add some weight to each input. Suppose I'm saying this is very important. So the weight that is being added to this is 1. And suppose this is not very important. So the weight that is being added to this is 0.5. So synapses are adding the weights depending on the importance of each input over here. Okay, so all these inputs multiplied by their weights, that is going to this your cell body, or you can say this is your node cell nucleus. What is happening after this, that I will tell you later on. So again, I'm going to the previous slides. This one now you can see. So these are your nodes, X1, X2, and Xn. Okay. So in ENN, you will be representing these nodes by a circle. So what are these nodes? You can see actually these are the cell nucleus that you have in your neuron cell, one cell. This nucleus is being represented by these nodes. And these are the inputs X1, X2, and X1. And these inputs are being accepted by the dendrites actually. Okay, so these you can say these are the dendrites that are accepting the input that is going to these nodes. Then some weights are being added to these inputs. So these weights are being added by the synapses. Like over here you can see there are some inputs, some weights are being added by the synapses, and then it is going to the neuron. What neuron is doing? It is processing that information and giving you the output. Okay, so here you are getting the output. That is a simple structure, simplest one of ENN. What this is called, actually, this is called a perceptron. That will come later on. So is it clear how our artificial neural network is similar to your biological neural network? So in ENN also, you are having these nodes that are accepting the input just like dendrites. Then these inputs are being multiplied by the weights just like the synapses in biological network. Then this neuron is actually processing this information. There are many things that is being happened over here that I'll tell you later on, and you are getting the output. Okay. So, so this thing I have told you that it is just I just mimic the network of neurons make up of this human brain neurons. Okay. So this is the abstraction. So if you want to draw a very simple diagram, you can draw it like this. This is your like biological neural network. In biological neural network now, instead of obviously you, if in exam it is coming, you can't draw this diagram. Don't draw this one, you can do this one, okay? So this is representing your nucleus of that neuron, and this is your cell body, okay? One thing is being represented by this, and these are your dendrites, and this is the axon through which the output is coming. Then through synapses, it will go to the second neuron, okay? So through synapses, it will go to the, as input to the second neuron. Again, it will process the information, it will give you the output, okay? So if you are taking this simple biological one cell, one neuron, then just related to this, you are having this simple ENN. Actually, this is not ENN, like you can say this is your perceptron. Perceptron is simple neural network, simplest one. So one is happening over here, you are having a single node. That node is accepting the input over here and giving you the output. Okay, so this is similar to this one, like you can see. Okay, so this is your one perceptron. Okay, till now, if you have any doubt. Okay. So what is a perceptron? Like what is a perceptron? Anything that is taking the multiple inputs and producing one output, that is actually called the perceptron. Okay. So over here you can see I have made this one circle. So here you are having many inputs and this is one output. So this would be called a perceptron. Is it okay? So what is the perceptron in our ENN? That is the basic unit of our neural network. Like here it is written, just like on Earth, atom is a basic unit. Similarly, in our neural network, this perceptron is representing the basic unit. That means our ENN is actually made up of multiple perceptrons. So what they are doing, they are taking the inputs and it is producing one output. Okay. So how it is producing the output, like simply like I can say that suppose if x1, I'm saying if the output is like this x1, you just take the addition of that. Simple thing, like if I'm taking, actually in ANN it is not like this because it is very simple. Suppose x1 is 1, x2 is 0, x3 is 0. You take the summation of these. Okay, when you're taking the summation of this, what you are getting in the output, you are getting 1. So if you are getting suppose 1 or greater than 0.5, then you're saying output is 1, otherwise it is 0. Suppose if this is your 0.5, x1 is 0.5, or suppose you take 0.4. Now, when you're taking the summation of this, output is 0.4. It is lesser than 0.5, you can say output is your 1. Okay, so depending upon like what is the function that I have to take in order to calculate the output, that I will take later on, which function we have to use. It can be very simple, or you can do one thing, you can add the weights with them. x1, w1, x2, w2, x3, w3. Then I will take the summation of all these three. Like you can say, what is the output? For output, you need to find out what is w1 x1 plus w2 x2 plus w3 x3. Suppose when I'm taking the summation of that, and if it is greater than some threshold, suppose threshold is 0.5, then I'm saying output is 1. Otherwise, if it is lesser than 0.5, the output is 0. Okay, so this way we can calculate the output by taking the summation of just these inputs, but usually we don't take that. We multiply each input by its weight and then we take the summation. But again, we don't take simply this thing. Why? Because we have already done in case of like a linear model, linear regression, that regression line is like this, mx plus b. That means whenever you are, this is your weight actually, whenever you are suppose multiplying the weight with this and you are taking this bias as 0, that means your line is, if this is linear model, your line is passing through the this origin. Okay, but usually we don't take b as 0. We want that, because if you will take b as 0, your network or your model won't be able to classify the data properly. Okay, you need to take some value of bias. That bias can be, suppose this thing, your line is like this thing, suppose that bias is this much. Okay, so that value we need to take something, suppose that is 0.5, that means your line is now is like this. It is not passing through the region, it is passing at this point, it is cutting the y-axis at this point. Okay, so in that case, what would be the output? Output would be w1 x1 plus w2 x2 plus w3 x3 plus here bias value also we are going to take. Okay, so why we are taking the bias? Because it allows us to move the line up and down to fit the prediction with data better. If you are not taking that B, without B, the line will always pass through the origin and you may get a poorer fit. That means your accuracy of your model won't be high. So we need to take some value of B. So ultimately, I'm saying I'm not taking this thing to generate the output. I'm not taking this thing. We need to take this thing whenever we need to find out the output over here. So this was your simple perceptron model. So whenever you want to take the output from this, you need to take the summation. So I will go to this one. This is very important. Suppose beta, if in exam, some question is coming related to ANN or some node type, okay? So then in that case, this is very important. You can draw this figure and you can explain each and everything over here. Okay, so what is happening over here now, you can see when inputs are coming, those inputs are being accepted by the dendrites. Then these synapses are adding the weights depending upon the importance of each feature. Like in IRIS database, if petal width is very important. In order to classify the output, then the weight that is being attached to this is more as compared to the weight that is attached to suppose sepal width. Okay. Now, what cell body is doing over here? What it will do, what cell will do, it will process this information. How it is processing the information? First of all, it is taking the summation of all these inputs multiplied by their weights. That means X0 W0 plus X1 W1 plus X2 W2. Next, it is adding bias to this. Why it is adding the bias? In order to classify the data properly. Okay, so I think this is clear. What's the meaning of this now? What cell body is doing? Firstly, it is finding the summation of this, plus it is adding the bias to this. Next, now whatever you are getting over here, to this, some activation function is being applied. Okay, so you can see over here, some activation function is being applied to what? To this thing. Suppose this is your Y. So here I can write down Fy. And this is actually your output. Okay, so output is from this input, you're getting the output. That output may go to the next neuron if you're having at the next layer. Otherwise, this is the final output, like you can see. Now, what is this activation function? So that is given separately in your syllabus. So even I have made different slides for that. But simple function of activation is that, like if you are just taking a simple linear model, if you want to create, then you don't need any activation function. Or right now, if you remember SVM, in case of SVM, I had told you that there are some kernels. So what is the function of those kernels? Like if your data set is linear, okay, then you can just use the kernel model, a linear kernel model, in order to classify your data. Suppose your data is like this. That means one class data set is coming over here, another one is coming over here. That means just one line can be used in order to separate this data. So here also, only this line, this is just representing your linear model. This is just like mx plus b. This is the line equation actually. Okay, so if you're just using this thing, then it can be used to classify your linear data set. But if your data set is very complex, if there is no linearity, then you can't use simply this thing to classify your data set. Okay, so for that, you need to apply some activation function. So what those activation function will do? They will separate your data set depending upon the non-linearity in your data set, depending upon the complexity in your data set, just like kernels in SVM. Okay, so I'll take this topic later on. So you can assume that if you're just using this, if you're not using the activation function, then your ANN is just like your linear model. So there is no advantage of using this ANN. So after taking the summation and after adding the bias, actually we are applying some activation function to this, and then you're getting the output. Okay. So over here I have written like activation function takes a sum of the weighted inputs. This thing I have told you as an argument, and returns the output of the neuron. Now, what can be the output? If suppose that output is 0, that can be 1, or in case of Iris database, like you can say that can be oxytosa flower, it can be versicolor or virginica, like this way. Now, there are different types of activation functions like sigmoid. This already we have done. TANH is there, then ReLU is there. So I will be doing all these activation functions later on. Fine. So this thing, you again, the same diagram, but in a simple way. If you want to make that thing, you can do that. Here different inputs are coming. Here you are just calculating the summation of all the inputs multiplied by weights, and some bias is being added, suppose, then it will go to some activation function. After applying the activation function, actually you are getting the output. Okay, if you want, you can skip this diagram, otherwise same thing. And again, this is the same thing that I have told you. Suppose that activation function is something like this, that if Wx plus B is greater than some threshold value, I'm saying output is 1. And if this is lesser than or equal to S, then output is your 0. This is the simplest activation function. Okay, what activation function is doing? It is taking Wx plus B, okay, and it is just checking that if the value of this is greater than S, it is 1, otherwise it is 0. So right now it is just like a linear model, like you can say binary function you are applying, but actually we won't be using this one. There are other ways to use the activation function. Yes, Beta. Yes, any doubt? Initially, ANN neural network was introduced. At that time, we were using the perceptron in order to find out the output. But now, instead of having a simple perceptron, you are having multi-layer perceptron. That is called the ANN, artificial neural network. So in ANN now, you are having multiple layers. Like here, I have just drawn 3 layers ANN. First layer is the input layer, that is must that you need. This is your output layer, just like in perceptron. So if this is a perceptron, you will say this won't be there. So if you are just having one input layer that is taking the input, and it is suppose going to this layer that is producing the output, then you can say that is a simple perceptron. Okay, there is no other layer. They are just 2 layers, input layer and the output layer. But in case of multi-layer perceptron, there are many layers in between input and output layer. Those layers are called your hidden layers. Okay, hidden layers means they are hidden. We can't see that. Those are hidden from the outside environment. Okay, so MLP that you are having, even in sklearn, that stands for multi-layer perceptron. So it will consist of multiple layers that are called hidden layers, and those are stacked in between input and output layer. What are the function of these hidden layers? What is the function of this input and output? That I will take now. Okay, so over here, what is happening? Some inputs are coming. Those inputs are being accepted by the input layer. So here you are having 3 nodes. So these 3 nodes are accepting the inputs, and then these inputs are being multiplied by the weights. Okay, suppose this is X1 that is being multiplied by W1. That output is going to each node of the next layer. It is going to this one, this one, this, and this one. Similarly, X2 is being multiplied by some weight that is going to the each node of the second layer. Then this one also is going over here. Then this layer is producing the output. You are getting the output from these, and these outputs are being added. Again, some weights are being applied to that, some bias is being applied to that, and even the activation function is being applied over here. Here also. Here also. After that, you're getting the output, and that is going to the output layer, which is producing you the output, actual output over here. Okay. So what is the function of input, output layer, and the hidden layer? That I will take now. I think 2 minutes are remaining. Anyway, I will do only input layer. So what is the function of the input layer? That is nothing actually. Input layer will just take the input from the external environment, okay? And it won't change the input. It will pass those inputs to the other layer. Like here I have written, the purpose of the input layer is to receive the input values of the attributes for each observation. Of each observation means, suppose if you are taking the IRIS database, there were the 4 attributes. So it will take these 4 inputs for each observation. Usually the number of input nodes in input layer is equal to the number of the variables. What's the meaning of this now? Like in IRIS database, there were 4 variables. So if you are having the 4 variables, there would be 4 nodes in the input layer. One will be taking the petal length, another petal width, sepal length, and sepal width. That means the number of nodes at the input layer level is same as that of the number of features that you are having in your data set. Okay, so that is the main thing of the input layer. So these input layers then will communicate to the next layer, that can be the output layer, or in case of MLP, that would be the hidden layer. So these are called passive. Passive means why? Because they don't change the data. They received a single value on their input